Welcome. Today's episode is for the more experienced expert in their field, someone who has some time in the marketplace and is looking for additional ways to generate income, as well as to solidify their legacy when it comes to their position in life and expertise. Now, I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations, where we help high-income professionals and entrepreneurs. We help high-net-worth individuals create the influence and legacy they desire. And this is a little strange because usually what people do as they get older, as they gain experience in the workplace, they often get screwed over because their income drops and some younger twit comes in and starts bossing them around and tells them what to do. I'm just being honest. I'm being fair. This is what happens to the majority of people. But you, as someone who's taking the time to be a part of this podcast, Inside Strategic Relations, and someone who is studying the power of business relationships, deserve something different. So what I'm going to share with you is a technique that's being used right now, and it's been used for many years, that helps you increase your income, increase your influence in a marketplace, actually puts you in an expert or leadership position, and ultimately helps you gain residual income from the knowledge you already know. Now, this is very important because as you get older, the truth is you probably don't want to work as hard. You know, you're not as eager and dumb to work the hours and work the weekends and do the thing that the big corporation wants because you already know that it's a fallacy. You know about techniques such as making a promise that's kind of out of reach and then telling somebody, you know, if you just work a little bit ahead of the role you're in and you work for the next role, you'll eventually get it. Well, you've seen that doesn't happen that way, but you've got experience, you've got a certain level of expertise. Rather than turning that into pessimism, let's turn it into income that sustains a lifestyle that you desire. Is that something you're interested in? Is that something that would be of benefit to you? And by the way, this works even if you're not retired or older or are more experienced in the marketplace. It's an understanding that you can use in your career today to develop the artifacts necessary to present yourself as an expert in the marketplace. Let's first talk about some of those artifacts, and then I'm going to give you specific examples on how you can use leadership to generate additional revenue, generate influence in a marketplace, make connections, have a more meaningful and experienced lifestyle from strategic relationship techniques. So first off, one of the artifacts that people create that positions them in a marketplace as an expert is a book, some kind of bookstore book. Now, I have used books to get new positions, to close client deals, to open up the doors for our new opportunities, and many of my books were not published by a mainstream publisher. Many of them were in manuscript format, and many were at best a very nice Word document in a PDF form. Now, I do have actual bookstore books that are at Amazon. I haven't updated them in a while, but many of these programs could even be in binders. I don't necessarily recommend that because I made the mistake of taking too long to write these materials and get them out in the marketplace. I also didn't take advantage of media. I didn't take advantage of distribution channels, and ultimately did not take advantage of the power of having an actual real publisher. Now again, I want you to learn from my mistakes rather than repeating them, and I've changed and adapted my methodologies in order to improve this legacy position that I want to make sure you can get in today. But a book, a special report, a presentation in front of a trade group, a audio lecture or recording that helps a new person in the marketplace understand the value and importance of the insights that you've tested over the years. Now, some people might say, well, books are old. Nobody's reading books these days. Yes, it's true that the majority of books purchased are never read. Okay, that's how I could get away with a manuscript that literally is consulting notes that have been updated over time and a kind of a guide for doing a consulting engagement. Now, the appropriateness of that was that this manuscript was provided as part of a consulting engagement. So just having a book has very little value. That book must be a part of the engagement or the interaction that you're going to have with clients. So here's an example. Think of the top 10 successes you've had in your career. Okay, you're going to write them down. Now, of each of those successes, you're going to answer the who, what, when, where, and why, setting up a single-page case study. Now, a single-page case study isn't going to do anything in the marketplace, but it gets your idea down on paper. Then you're going to do a 5 to 10 minute presentation about the success story as if you were in a job interview. So somebody says to you, tell me about the success that you've had in your career. Give me one example of where you faced a problem and overcame it. You're going to respond with your presentation, kind of an elevator pitch. It's going to be a lot of benefits. It's going to be a lot of tease in the continuation of listening, but also teasing out the reason why you were a critical part of that exchange. Now, this exercise right here gets you started with what's called an artifact that now can be expanded. So this artifact becomes, first it's practice, so that when you go for a job interview or you go to, your local trade group says, hey, we need a speaker for next week's meeting, and they say the topic that you are the expert in, this even prepares you to say, oh, I've got a 5 to 10 minute speech that we could use to set up the presentation before we eat. The point being here is that the perspective of other people towards your expertise, your credibility in the marketplace, is greatly improved when you have a practiced presentation. Now, you can go to Toastmasters, you can go and practice this with podcasts, you can actually start a lot of different things. You can get interviewed. But if you don't have that single page outline of the case study where you've been successful in the past and you identified certain problems and you identified a certain approach and solved that problem, then you're at a disadvantage when it comes to use this technique. Now, I'm going to give you some of the more advanced elements of this technique, but this is a baseline, kind of a foundation that you need to have some successes. Now, if you look back on your career and you have no successes, then maybe you need to talk to a counselor, because you wouldn't have longevity in a marketplace if you didn't have some kind of success. You also can look at your expertise. You can look at how you've applied that expertise, but the single page, perhaps you've done this in a journal, the single page kind of organizes those ideas. It makes it a little bit easier to take this next step. Now, let me give you two examples. Now, you may not even know who these people are, but in my life, I've seen what I'm about to describe used. Now, what I'm about to describe is kind of a rent-seeking mechanism. Now, I know rent-seeking has a negative connotation, because rent-seeking is the effort of increasing your share of wealth without creating any new wealth. It's like a dividend on what you already know. So I'm not asking you to become a different person to get the results that we're looking for here, which is longevity in the marketplace or a desire to hire you even though you're an older worker. The positioning of expertise that sets you up for consulting, the creation of artifacts that prove your value. See, in today's marketplace, it's a lot of effort to go apply for new work. Well, you can actually attract new opportunities. So you can shift from being an employee to being a consultant by having something in the marketplace where people will raise their hand and say to you, I want what you offer. So as you can see, that first exercise really is about this, figuring out what you offer, and then packaging it in such a way that you can present the value of it. And then this more advanced technique, which I'll introduce you to through two examples, is how you can start generating revenue. Now, this rent-seeking, I like the word rent-seeking because you're literally renting out your expertise to generate income. Now, again, you can sell the book, and a lot of people think they're going to be a best-selling author and they're going to make a bunch of money, but selling a book, you're not going to make any money. The book is how you organize information and how you save time, because now you can leave behind the book rather than having to prove to somebody that you have any value in the marketplace. But finally, the income is generated on how you use the gained expertise and position in your market, because everybody who's listening to this, who's making six figures, they don't pay you six figures if you don't have some ability to solve problems. It's just the way it works. So again, you've already got the ability to solve the problems. You've already got experience in the marketplace. Now we work on the clear communications and the artifacts necessary to set you up for long-term success. So there's this guy named Jim Strahl. he was an information marketer. He was a finder. He did a lot of business deals in Georgia and the South. And he actually wrote reports and books later in his life that described the experiences he had early in his life. And these reports were very simple, very easy to follow language. They were actually targeted towards individuals who were opportunity seekers. But they were written in such a way that you could learn from his expertise. And if you wanted further coaching and one-on-one consulting, you could then hire him. But here's what's unique about those reports, because what I just described is the typical coach, but he went a step further. Jim Straw, as a marketer, marketed his books that taught things like how to be a finder, how to make money by being a middleman. These are the things that he did in real life. He would find equipment, and he would find somebody who wanted to buy equipment, and then he would broker the deal to sell the equipment to the other person. And if you sell $1 million worth of equipment, you can make $100,000 in commissions. And so he wrote down his entire model. Now, at first, he wrote down the model so that his assistant and staff could do the work. So when he's traveling around looking for opportunities or on vacation, his wife and him would be able to do the activity consistently because he wrote it down in the report. Then he rewrote the report later in life in order to sell the report to individuals who wanted to do the same thing. And what's powerful about this is that the individual could use the report and actually get results, but when they found a big deal, who do you think they called for help? So a lot of people buying these reports were out in the marketplace. They find $1 million worth of equipment. They don't have the confidence. They don't have the skills. They maybe don't understand the instructions completely. They call up Jim Straw and they say, Mr. Straw, and he would always say, Mr. Straw is my daddy's name. Just call me Jim. Real nice guy. I met him a couple times. Very nice guy. The key was if somebody using his program got in over their head, they could call him and assign the deal. So they found $1 million worth of equipment. He had this network of people who bought his reports. Someone in there would find a buyer, and he would network the deal. So essentially, his artifacts, which were special reports, were actually tools to find him more deals because he didn't want to travel as much. So he didn't want to travel city to city like he was doing before, unless it was vacation. So the reports actually went city to city ahead of him. He was able to cover more ground and ultimately ended up with a finder's newsletter, the report, and lots of people running around doing stuff. Now, the majority of the people who bought the finder's report did nothing. Okay, so that's something you have to accept. But think about this. If he was out recruiting people to be in his program, or he was hiring staff to go find deals for him, and you had people that didn't work, it's a very costly endeavor. But if he takes a few days to write a very simple report, to write a sales letter, and to ultimately provide them a package of information, people would volunteer themselves to go do this. Now, the individuals who got the report, I bought the report, it's a very good report. If they followed the instructions, they would actually make money. But, again, most people don't have the confidence that you have because you've gained experience, and maybe when you started you didn't have the confidence. This packaging up of your insights and syndicating it through reports is a way to keep that lead flow going. So you're going to see this in the real estate industry. I worked a long time ago. I worked as a bird dog to a real estate agent. I was not a licensed real estate agent, but they gave me a specific set of instructions to go find them properties, and then for every property that I found, they paid me a little bit of money. This is something that happens in the industrial world with big businesses. There's finders who find business owners who want to sell their business. Now, again, the finder concept is one example. What Jim Straw was able to do was to generate revenue from the reports, to generate revenue from deals, and to generate revenue from coaching and consulting. Now, the reason I use the term rent seeking is because a lot of people on the outside look and they say that is not a value creating activity. All you're doing is sharing the information you already know and you're selling it to people, and information should be free. And unfortunately, this is the same bias and prejudice that causes managers to look at older workers and essentially say they have no value in the marketplace. They don't understand the current technologies. They don't understand, all these biases are actually based on someone else's beliefs and ultimately don't help them either. So maybe that prejudice has low value too. But ultimately, you're collecting a rent on the knowledge you already have, and once you've created the artifact, and again, it could be a report, it could be a book, it could be an audio training presentation, it could be a video training presentation, it could be a multimedia package. None of that really matters, but once you create it, you can sell it over and over and over and over again. And now, like I said, many of my reports, I don't put a lot of effort into selling them because I can go to the specific industry that I know hires my type of skills, and I can simply give them the report. So a lot of times you have like a resume, and you have a functional resume that bullet points your key achievements. Well, for every one of those key achievements, I have a report written. So if somebody says, hey, we've got a lot of candidates for this particular position, or we're talking to a number of consultants, and I say, well, what's your specific challenge or problem? And they tell me, I usually have a report specific on that. And I'll say, look, I've heard that being a challenge in a lot of cases. Let me send you some resources that will help whether you choose me or not. But I'd like to send you some resources. I get their address. I FedEx them a package. It has a copy of my resume. It has a functional resume. It has the special report, usually bound, kind of a okay looking bound. But again, I work in the corporate environment, so I'm not going for a bookstore book. They want cutting edge information, so I usually simply just print it out on my copier and then bind it with a spiral bound or something like that, put a little recover on it. So it looks like a strategic report. Now, depends on where you are and what you do. You might need a bookstore book. You might need something with a nice cover. But again, it is setting you up to be the expert in the field and to be in a position where you're not begging for an opportunity. You're ultimately saying, look, hey, I've seen that before. Let me show you how, and then they on their own time can read it. Now, if they don't read it, that's okay. If they just throw it in trash, who cares? Because, again, you haven't engaged and had a lot of interaction other than follow-up, so you're not really losing a lot of time. Now, when you do this on scale like Jim Strahl did, you end up with hundreds of thousands of newsletter subscribers, hundreds of thousands of people out there finding you opportunities, and then ultimately you gain that residual income on the back end of what you're doing. I'll give you one more person, Dan Pena. You've probably heard of Dan Pena. Dan Pena teaches people how to roll up businesses. He has published the 50 years or 40 years of his experiences for free. You can go online and download all Dan Pena's QLA formula. Now, it doesn't really matter what you think of Dan Pena. Dan Pena is doing Dan Pena. Ultimately, he has created an opportunity for students to come train with him. So again, he sits in his Gunther Castle, and he teaches using multimedia, and then he teases out a $35,000 program, which his staff will put 10 to 20 people in each time he runs the program. The underlying factor is that he'll get interviewed at places, and this is something he enjoys doing. Dan Pena actually, when a student has a big deal, they will actually flip it to him, or he will assist them with a joint venture. Now, again, how many students come up with deals? Very few. How many students get coaching? Not as many. How many students are interested in what he's doing and watch his YouTube channel or get his reports online? Thousands and thousands. It's a model that generates revenue, again, on the knowledge you already have. Meanwhile, it positions you in the marketplace, and you don't have to be as public as Dan Pena. Jim Strahl was only known to his audience, but ultimately it's about taking your past successes, repackaging them. Now, of course, you're going to ask yourself, are they still relevant? But repackaging the relevant elements into talking points, into a newsletter, into a book, into a special report, into something that when you have the opportunity to interact with somebody and they say, look, I've got this problem, rather than spending 2 hours talking to them and really not having any, a lot of it, free advice nobody really values. Everything we share in these podcasts, you could find it eventually on the internet. everything I've done for six-figure consulting deals, for the millions of dollars I've created for clients, you could eventually learn all that information when you go online. And when you ask the question, how do people learn these insights? Well, they go to more experienced individuals. See, again, there is a prejudice. They don't want to hire more experienced individuals. They want to just pick their brain. And by picking their brain, they're essentially picking their pocket. This method in detail generates revenue from that. And if you think about it, I use the word rent seeking. I know it has negative connotations, but I think someone asking you questions and using the insights and experience you have without compensating you is just as much theft as you receiving a rent or a revenue by licensing, sharing, or otherwise imparting the knowledge you already have. So what's exciting about this is you don't have to learn anything new in order to be successful with this. We're refining your communication skills. We're improving your approach in the marketplace, and you're ultimately setting yourself up so that when someone has a big opportunity, they turn to you rather than someone else. Now, the real secret of this, because I mentioned Dan Pena, I mentioned Jim Strahl, they're in their 70s doing this stuff. Okay, they're past being employed directly as an employee, and in fact, it's not likely they want to be individual contributors on a team. So there is a mindset element that you've got to understand here, is that do you really want to show up for a job every day? Do you really want to go out the daily grind? Or do you want to build a small team that helps position you as an expert in the marketplace? It helps you use the knowledge you already have in order to build lists of customers, set up consulting opportunities, find new opportunities of work. And if you're not aware, PwC, KPMG, they hire consultants all the time at $100 an hour rates, $140 an hour rates. But again, you don't get those positions without having the artifacts that demonstrate your value in the marketplace, without having some kind of marketing or presenting of those talking points, and without understanding that it's cheaper to hire a bunch of college students to grind them out and deal with the turnover than it is to hire the expertise, because and this is where we have to understand relationships, because these are like 40-year-old, 30-year-old managers who don't have the practical experience that you have. Now, they're going to look for the ideas, they're going to look for the solutions, and you could be there when they look for it, but they're not going to hire you for a 20-year career. And frankly, you probably don't want a 20-year career if you're already 40. You know, if you're already 40, you're already 50, you don't want to have a 20-year career on top of this. You want to start moving towards a lifestyle. So what we've talked about here really is a leadership lifestyle. Now, this is not giving this information away for free. This is not creating a podcast or a blog, even though those might be valuable artifacts. This is really about leveraging your experience to generate income on what you already know, to increase your share of wealth with what you know today and your past successes and your experience, because all that's very credible, and become a solutions provider for a larger audience. Now, again, that large audience may not use any of the insights that you share. You may have the perfect solution for them, and either they can't find you, or once they've read the materials, they don't have the maturity to do something with it. But ultimately, again, there's massive value in your knowledge and experience. And unfortunately, the U.S. culture doesn't appreciate that. But there's a lot of opportunities coming online in India, a lot of opportunities coming online in China, a lot of opportunities coming online in Africa, where culturally they have more respect for their so-called elders. Now, I'm 47 years old, so I can talk with you like this. But I've known 65-year-olds, 75-year-old, 85-year-old individuals who liked the excitement of business, and they used a similar model. And by the way, if you have questions about this model, I'm Justin Hitt with Inside Strategic Relations. You can visit me at www.insidestrategicrelations.com. Go to the contact page, ask your questions. But if you'd like more information on this leadership rent seeking, you have to understand that it's meant to fit your lifestyle. So it may not be a fortune building activity, but it doesn't have to cost you a fortune to get started. And what's important about this is that the skills you refine in this particular methodology actually make you more valuable in the marketplace. So a lot of people might have experienced already that they're hiring younger people at higher prices, and these younger people don't know what they're talking about, and you're willing to take the time and mentor them, and you even gain a little bit of self-satisfaction with mentoring them. But again, it's not increasing your wealth. It's not increasing your income, and it's only stroking your ego. Well, what if there was a way, as I've described today, to use artifacts in the marketplace to position you as an expert? And then finally, another benefit of this particular method is that these artifacts can travel faster than you can. These artifacts can show up on the desk of a decision maker. They can show up in a newspaper or a trade publication, and that is the value, because you'll get that phone will ring, that you'll get an email, and someone will say, hey, look, I heard you spoke at such and such a trade group. Our local regional event, they need a speaker, and I'd love you to come down and talk to us. Now, again, you don't just go fly over there. This is not about being a public speaker. This is not about being an author. This is about being a recognized expert in your field, and you would then offer what it is that you have. You may not want to travel across the country and speak. You may want to simply just do the presentation from your home using technology. Or, maybe they're meeting in Boca Raton, and you do want to go out there. Anyway, I want to thank you for being a part of today's episode. Today's episode has been about rent seeking on your experience and knowledge. And a lot of folks just have bad opinions of rent seeking itself, but you've already done the work. You've already made the investment. Why not get a dividend from the knowledge you already have? Why not build passive income and new lifestyle experiences with the successes you've had in the past? And what you will discover is that you'll create more successes in the future. You'll help other people create success in what they're doing, and ultimately it feels great. It is a way of building and maintaining relationships that has massive value for you and for the marketplace. I'll see you in the next episode.